Right now in Destiny 2, the Prismatic subclass is absolutely insane across every single class. Stack on top of that the new exotic weapon, the Praxic Blade. We can make one of the most broken sword builds we've ever had. Not to mention that the seasonal artifact highly emphasizes us using a sword. Put this all together and whew, goddamn, I think it's time to make a Jedi Hunter build.
Hello there.
Welcome back to the channel, Guardians. Today we're going to be making a Hunter Prismatic build, all centered around our Praxic Blade here. Now, I've seen a lot of builds on the internet focusing on either Titan or Warlock Prismatic builds, not too many on the Hunter side. And this build here kind of plays out like if you've ever played Star Wars The Old Republic, the Sith Assassin or the Jedi Shadow kind of reminds me of that. But first, where do you pick up the Praxic Blade? You're going to pick it up naturally in the campaign for Renegades, in the Fire and Ice mission, which is actually an exotic mission as well. So now let's talk about the Praxic Blade because this is what the entire build is based around. Now you can see there intrinsically this exotic weapon can deal with anti-barrier champions, and this build overall is actually going to cover every one of the champions, so it's going to be really useful, say, outside of the Lawless Frontier activities. But with the Prismatic Blade here, the most important thing is your power core as far as this build. And the one that you want to shoot for is the impact core here. You get this at the outpost if you have to go and buy it, but I think it's on a daily rotator, so when you see that the impact core is up, go and get it. Now, what makes this core so important? Well, when we do melee damage, it will apply an elemental effect that matches our super. In this case, what we're looking for is that weaken targets. But even if you don't have this core and say, but you're pretty far in your artifact, I didn't bounty hunt, you can take something like Singularity Blade here, and it's going to do the same thing. So there's a little bit of a workaround if you don't have the impact core just yet. But that's the Praxic Blade, which our entire build is going to be centered around. Let's talk about the subclass now. Now, the Hunter subclass that we're going for is Deadfall. Now, this is going to allow us to suppress targets, but it's also going to help us out with overload champions and spawn us a bunch of orbs of power. It's going to be very handy, and we get the weakened effect for it for our exotic weapon there. Now, for our abilities, we're going with Acrobat's Dodge, and this is going to give us Radiant. Radiant will help us out with barrier champions, but more importantly, this is going to bump up our weapon damage. For your melee, you can honestly pick whatever you want because we're using a sword. We're not really going to be worried about our melee here, but I am going with Threaded Spike because this is this is the only way that we're going to have that sever effect. Not super important, I'm just kind of putting it in there. For your grenade, you can either go with your Arc Bolt grenade or you can go with the Void Magnetic grenade, but I probably would recommend the Arc Bolt grenade instead, and you'll see why when we talk about our fragments. Now when it comes to our aspects, going with Stylus Executioner, we're going to be doing so many void debuffs or just debuffs in general, especially weakened. Going to grant us invisibility, a little bit of survivability, lets us move around safely. That's why I said that if you played Star Wars The Old Republic, kind of reminds me of a Sith Assassin because they have like a stealth mechanic as well. But the other aspect that we're going for is Ascension, so a little bit of AoE damage, but this is going to give us Amplified and Jolted. Jolted is another way to deal with overload champions, so more options for that is a good thing. Now, when it comes to our fragments, our first one here is Facet of Grace. Because we're using a kinetic weapon, we're going to build up our Transcendent bar, which is going to let us obviously go Transcendent, but this is going to give us our Hailfire Spike. So we're going to have access to being able to do Scorch, Ignitions, slow and freeze because you can spam this grenade when you are in that transcendent state, and also you're a little bit more tanky, and that's really good because we're going to be in melee a lot. And because we're going to be in melee a lot, that's why we're picking Facet of Protection here. Also bumps up our melee stat. That one's not so important. And the next fragment that we want is Facet of Purpose. We're going to be generating a lot of orbs of power, and because we have Deadfall there, they're going to be giving us Overshield, a little bit more protection. So just a good pick there. And then for our last facet there, we're going Facet of Dominance. Because we're taking a Void or Arc Grenade, I recommend the Arc Grenade. That's going to jolt targets, again, helping out with overload champions. So that's the subclass choices that we're making, but now we need to talk about our exotic armor because it's almost just as important as our exotic weapon here. And there are, I would say, 3 choices for this build. You can go with the Guizin Vest, you can also go with Khepri's Sting, And then you could just take something like Orpheus Rigs here if you really want. But these two choices here, the Guizen Vest and the Khepri Sting, they kind of do the same thing where the vest here, when you're exiting invisibility, we're going to be invisible a lot. We're going to make a cloud of weakening. So that's going to be really helpful as far as just keeping enemies around us, again, weakened. Same thing for Khepri Sting here, where defeating a weakened target, and because we're using our Praxic Blade, and that's going to weaken targets, we're going to then create a smoke bomb as well. So again, more of that cloud of weakness. And when it comes to the rest of your armor mods and then your armor stats, for your stats, you want to be targeting super class and then weapon. Weapon here, that 15% damage bump on top of being radiant. For your leg slot here, we are taking 2 kinetic weapon surges, again, building on top of that damage, which means we need to be spawning orbs. So that's why for our head slot here, we're taking kinetic siphon. And we also want something like a special ammo finder as well. But those are kind of the mods that you should be shooting for. And then I guess on your cloak here, you want something like powerful attraction. And then the rest of the mods here, kind of up to you. Now, before we talk about our artifact, I just want to state that this build without the artifact is going to be basically very strong even after the artifact is gone. A lot of things in the artifact are going to basically do what we're already doing intrinsically with our exotic weapon, our exotic armor, and our subclass features. So you could be missing pieces of this build and basically compensate for them in the artifact there. Now when it comes to your artifact, this is going to make this build even better. Some of the perks here, Power from Pain, this is going to grant us Devour. We don't have access to this otherwise. And I'm almost wishing that Bungie would just let us see all of our buffs now on that left side of the screen. Just fill it up with everything that we're doing, because with this Prismatic build, the buffs that we're having at any given time, it's just going to be crazy. So this is going to be really good for surviving, especially in the Lawless Frontier activity. One of the other perks as well is Riposte. This is going to let us deal with unstoppable champions. So our Prismatic Blade is dealing with barrier champions, unstoppable champions, and then our subclass is helping out with overload champions. We're covered, and we haven't even talked about a special or powerful weapon, because we really don't need to use them. Our kinetic blade there, or sword, is doing all the work for us. And some of the other artifact mods that I like that work with this build: Combination Argent Blade, this is going to do more damage with our Praxic Blade. That's going to be good. Singularity Blade here, we don't need to take it because of everything that we have as far as our exotic armor piece. But if you don't have, I would say, an easy access to Weakened, or you don't have the Impact Core, I would take this, and that's going to compensate for you. We could also change out our core and take this Singularity Blade and change the core up for the refraction one, so when we reflect damage, it does that weakening effect, but really don't need to dive into that. It's a little overkill. Same thing with Void Infestation here. When we eventually get this last column, we're already creating Weakening Cloud, so we don't need to take that. But taking Sword Storm combo, I'm excited to pick this one up. This can be really good. And then anything else in this last column, probably just Kinetic Rupture. But again, with this build, it's absolutely going to slay out even after this artifact is gone. The only thing that I lament that we're going to miss is that easy access to Devour, but everything else, we should be good to go. Now, before we get to the brief overview of this build, as far as the other weapons, the only one that I would kind of really recommend is the power weapon here, this Disruption Rifle, and I would get something like Aggregate Charge on it. So because we're Prismatic, every elemental debuff we have on a target will build up damage for this sniper rifle. I think it maxes out at 3 charges, which is like 30% more damage. And then this sniper rifle absolutely slays out. I also have Lone Wolf, but Snapshot, pretty good with it too. Really quick ADS. And then I'm just building into the reload, so you can just change shots back to back. But this sniper rifle, really good with the build that we're running here, and I know you have to work into basically making sure the reload is really good with this weapon, or at least it's really snappy. But other than that, man, this sniper rifle, it kind of rocks. Now, how do you play this build? Well, it's not that complicated. With your Praxic Blade, you're going to be weakening targets, and you're going to be spawning orbs of power. When you generate those orbs of power, you're going to be getting Overshield, and you're also going to be getting Kinetic Surge. And because of our artifact, we're also going to be granting ourselves Devour, which we're going to upkeep by slaying out. And then when you defeat a target, you're going to be going invisible, and you're going to be spreading those weakening clouds either by your chest exotic piece or something like Khepri Sting. And while you're lightsabering everything down, you want to pop your Ascension, I would say, as often as possible, especially if you're surrounded. That's going to make you amplified, but also grant you that radiant effect. And anytime we defeat a target with an elemental debuff, that's going to make us invisible. So if we go into a hot situation and we need to disengage, that's going to be our best bet for that. You should also be ripping your super as often as possible to generate orbs for your allies, but also to suppress a large area. And then when you really want to turn up the heat, you can go Transcendent and become the Master Jedi you've always wanted to be.
I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
And remember, just with our Praxic Blade, we can deal with barrier champions and we can deal with unstoppable champions. And because of our Jolt Grenade and our Ascension, we can deal with overload champions, meaning we never need to change off of using our Praxic Blade. Alright y'all, that's the build, that's the video. Let me know how you're enjoying Destiny 2 Renegades. I think that it's actually one of the better expansions because of the Lawless Frontier. I'm having a lot of fun in that activity, a lot more than I thought I was going to be. It's having me stick around and playing like every day just because it's just fun. And having fun in Destiny 2 is it's a weird thing nowadays, but we still have some things with the Praxic Blade to unlock because the dungeon is not out yet. So if you see this video after the dungeon is out, just know that some of the choices in there, especially the Catalyst, is something I really want for this build, but also that crystal that comes from the dungeon, which you might be seeing that in an upcoming build that we're going to do again after the dungeon is out. But yeah, that's the video guys. If you've made it this far, thank you very much, and I'll see you next time. Peace!